suppose
Okay,
may as
sorry,
well
let me
get started. Oh yes,
silence my
if you'd
devices.
like to, this is the great time to quiet your phones or do what
I
you
just
need to.
did.
Yeah.
Problem
Like
we
that.
do that is we never remember to unquiet them.
That is
Makes the evening,
definitely
so you're
my
like,
issue.
every time I go to a meeting, my evening is so quiet.
Yeah, exactly.
So you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh my gosh,
The
five
next
missed calls.
morning, it's like.
Well, Tony leaves his phone laying around, he goes, just call my phone, so I call it, doesn't do me good, cause we can't hear it.
Well, thank you all so much for coming tonight. I intend to do a lot of these throughout the year, but I figured I'd start with some of our basic technology things that we might use in our community regularly. So last time we talked about the Libby app, and if you ever have questions about that, you can ask me anytime. But tonight, we'll be talking about picture and file storage, especially digital file storage. We all remember photo albums, at least I think all of us here can remember them, and having shoe boxes full of clipped pictures or file cabinets with our important files. But as we continue forward, more and more of that becomes digital. So whether you're accessing things that are sent to you by email or things that get shared to you by your devices or social media accounts, all those pieces of information. Hello, welcome in. We were just warming up and getting started. Please make yourselves at home.
Okay.
But with digital file storage, I thought it'd be fun to talk about storage that you might already have access to and might not know about. So as a show of hands, who here has an email address? How many of us have an @gmail.com address? What about @outlook.com?
Oh, Outlook.
Or perhaps an @iCloud? So fun fact, if you raise your hand, then you have actually access to a certain amount of free storage that's associated with that account.
Okay.
Welcome in, please make yourselves at home. So with those email accounts that you might have, especially through Microsoft, Google, or Apple, a lot of those accounts come with a certain amount of free storage. So there's a huge variety of storage places, and it can become quickly overwhelming and confusing. So tonight we'll explore a little bit of where those can go. So first I'm going to explain what cloud storage is, and then we'll go over a couple of examples of cloud storage services, and we'll do that together on the screen. And you can feel free to follow along on your devices if you'd like. And if you need the Wi-Fi password, it's footprints, all lowercase, one word. So what even is cloud storage? In short, it's saving digital files over the internet on off-site servers. And there's 3 words that are bolded here that could use a little bit of elaboration, especially if you don't work with digital file storage very often. So first is files. By files, we mean anything like pictures, documents, whether they're Word documents, Excel, PDFs, or even emails count as a digital file. So all of those take space in your inbox online. And by internet, I'm talking about connections to the internet. So an internet can be connected to through Wi-Fi, like what you might be connecting to on your devices now, or hard lines, like what connects to your desktop computers. That's Ethernet, fiber optic cable, even coax cable. And then there's also cellular data and hotspots. Cellular data is what your cell phones use to be able to connect to the internet, and hotspots are when your tablets or devices become sources of Wi-Fi. And jump in with any questions if you have them. I'm very open to that. And then lastly, by off-site servers, what I mean by that is Microsoft, Apple, Google, and many other companies have just towers that are made up of hard drives where that data gets stored, but they're off-site and they're managed by those service providers. So we connect to their servers online. So that's what we mean by saving digital files over the internet on off-site servers. And a quick fun note, when we talk about cloud storage, I've been in the Navy and I've heard every rank from E1 to O9 ask, what does the cloud, what does that mean? The cloud is simply symbolic of the online off-site location where files are stored. So it's symbolic, much like we used to talk about the World Wide Web as a source that connected us to all these bits of information. So it's kind of a metaphor. Depicted here on the screen are some of what the icons will look like for these different service providers. So this is Microsoft's OneDrive, iCloud for Apple, and Google Drive. And you'll notice that repeating imagery of clouds. And then there's also sub-applications within places like Google and iCloud, where they have separate apps for just the photos. And we'll talk about that a little more later. All right, so now that we know what cloud storage is, what's the benefits of using it? And there are three in particular that I wanted to mention. First of all is accessibility. With the cloud storage, you have access to your files regardless of what device you're using or where you're using it. So as long as you have a device, you're able to log into your account and you're connected to the internet, you can access a picture or a Word document from anywhere. So that can be at home, you can do it from your tablet and phone and computer all at the same time on the same desk. So it becomes very accessible, it's readily available to you, provided that you have the internet connection and your login information. Next up is security. And by this, I mean those service providers, whether they're Apple, Microsoft, or whatever. There's also Amazon, Dropbox is a popular data storage service. But they put a lot of time, money, and effort, people, into keeping their physical facilities safe and also maintaining contingency and redundancy within their servers, those towers that they maintain. So they might have 2 or 3 copies of the files you save in different locations, so that way if they experience a physical failure, your data still exists, they still have it on file, and you can still access it whenever you need. So the security element is a big one, because it's not dependent on whether or not you're maintaining your device, what condition it's in, or whether your shoebox catches fire. Which leads us to disaster recovery as another primary benefit of cloud storage. So disaster recovery can refer to anything from your devices essentially being in the cloud, whether your device is missing or broken. So if you accidentally run over your thumb drive because it fell out of your pocket between here and there, or whether your basement floods and your laptop computer that was down there gets waterlogged beyond repair, then you still have those files. They're not dependent on the physical device. So those are the 3 main reasons why, there's so many, but these are the primary ones why I recommend cloud storage to people. And with that, there's a lot of places that our pictures and files end up, and everyone's situation varies depending on what account they have, what devices they're using, and what their settings on those devices are as well, how they're set up to sync with your account or not. But there are a few reliable cloud services that I recommend, and it's those big 3, the Microsoft, Google, and Apple. So let's go ahead and just explore a little bit of those primary examples. To begin with, Microsoft, your Microsoft account, those accounts that end in Outlook.com or Live.com, they come with free 5 gigabytes worth of storage just with your free account, and that's before purchasing a subscription to their application suite or any of that. So just for having an email address and an account with them, you get 5 gigabytes of storage. In terms of how much does that hold, for Word documents, PDFs, and simpler files, that's quite a lot. I went through all of college using a free account, and those 5 gigs covered all 4 years of all my research papers, all my PDF sources, and the like. But when it comes to pictures and video files, those will eat up 5 gigs really fast. I don't know if anybody's used a digital camera that maybe had like a 2 or 1 gig card inside of it, but one afternoon of pictures, maybe over 2 hours, you can fill that card up really fast. So just to give you a sense of how much space that is. As for Google, Google tops out as the most amount of free storage. Your Gmail accounts afford you 15 gigabytes of free storage just for having an email address and account with them. And then iCloud is also 5 gigabytes. So, with that, I thought I'd show you what those OneDrive and Google Drive hubs kind of look like, just as examples. And whether you have these accounts or not, a lot of these services will look very similar, as you'll see. So first we'll talk about OneDrive, which is created and maintained by Microsoft. So that would be your email accounts that end in @outlook.com or @live.com. They have quite a few of legacy ones too. OneDrive live.com. So when we go to OneDrive, it'll prompt you to log in. You'll enter your email address and your password for your account to access this. But once you're logged in and you're at OneDrive, it'll have this landing page that'll be very similar across devices, or accounts, sorry. So this landing page will show you essentially recent files that you might have opened or used recently. But I'd like to especially direct your attention because the true heart of OneDrive is the area called My Files, and it's going to be this old school manila folder style envelope icon. My Files is how it's all organized. So this is where you can create folders. Some of the folders will be pre-built for you. So a lot of these are default folders that came with the account. So you'll have desktop, and that's meant to be similar to when you have an actual desktop at home, those things that would be on the screen when you log in. But it's kind of a floating desktop folder that goes with you wherever your account is logged in at. The documents, Dropbox, and pictures are all pre-built folders too. Microsoft does not have a separate app for pictures. They just have a little folder where those can go by default, but you can customize that heavily. So let's say we wanted to add a picture to our folder. From a computer, you'll need to have the picture saved onto the computer, or you'll have to look for it online and then still save it to that device. But from OneDrive, we'll go to the folder that we want to put the picture in, and this little blue plus is how we add different things, such as folders, files, and with Microsoft you can add digital versions of their programs such as Word and the like. However, we want to upload a file, picture file, so we're going to select that one, and it's going to allow us to search for what picture we want. So let's say we wanted to upload this picture, which is the icon for Apple Photos. So we can see here what the photo is called, and we'll select open, and it'll eventually bring that up. On a phone or a tablet, rather than looking for where on the computer, it might ask you which of these menu of apps would you like to select pictures from. So if you're on your phone, let's say you have an iPhone, it's like, would you like to select pictures saved to this device, or would you like to go to your Apple Photos app, and you can select from those which of them you'd like to add. And if anybody has questions or wants to see what that looks like on their phone, we can do that after.
I've got a question.
What you got, Randy?
I don't know if it relates to this or not,
Mhm.
it relates to pictures.
Absolutely.
Trying to send, attach and send pictures,
Mhm.
you have very limited capacity. At least are you talking about a way to expand that capacity to send pictures?
There are quite a few ways to send pictures, but it mostly depends on where you're starting. So what's a scenario where you might be trying to send a picture?
Well, I may have a number of pictures I wanna send to a publisher,
Okay.
and I attach these.
To an
and-
email?
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe 5 or more,
Mhm.
or even 3 or more, and invariably it doesn't go through.
Okay.
Now, how do you deal with that?
Well, we can do an example real quick, actually. So with your Microsoft account, you have this waffle of icons here, and that's meant to be symbolic of all these different apps. So we'll open Outlook just to do a demo of what that might look like. And excuse my messy inbox. Okay, this is essentially a junk folder. But let's say we were trying to send pictures to a publisher. We would open up a new email to compose. We would include our addressees, and then once it's done loading, we would add, there should be an option, that's what it is, it wants to advertise to us. Okay. Where is the, okay. So, I'm trying to see the, oh, maybe we have to have an addressee. There's our publisher. Okay. Subject, just as a demo. Using access. Alright. Okay, I figured it out, sorry. So, we've opened up a new email to send pictures to our publisher. Up here in the online version of Outlook, we have different tabs to include insert, and that will give us our options to attach files.
Right.
From there, and you're familiar with this, I know. We will browse the computer, or we could browse OneDrive. So if we had pictures in that OneDrive folder, like we saw here, we can select from there, for example, pictures, we navigate to where that picture is, we can select that one. Now down here in Microsoft, it's gonna offer to share it as a link, or what is often most helpful is to simply attach another copy of the image to that email. When you share a link, sometimes it gets really complicated because they might not be using the same email service, and it might not read properly when they go to open it. So if you just simply attach a copy, then they can download that and use it as they like. Let's say we wanted to attach another picture, but it was saved to the physical computer.
But it, actually, it says pictures, in that same line, it says pictures across, you know, like to the right of.
Oh, yes.
Can we just,
It will essentially take you right to the physical device. So
okay,
generally, this is functional, it works, but it's more convenient, I find, to use the general attach button, attach a file, because that includes pictures and include documents as well.
okay.
But yes, so, but this takes us to where we were trying to be anyway. So let's say for downloads, we wanted to add the iCloud one to send to our publisher. We would select that. And the following files weren't inserted because they were supported. Okay, so I'll add a different file that's appropriate. Browse. PNG. Okay. And so this one has a preview because of the type of file it is. So there's a lot of different types of picture files. They include JPEG, PNG, GIFs are another. They're those animated ones that'll maybe loop through the same animation.
So that previewed one, which one is that? Is that a
That's a PNG.
PNG? And so the first one is JPEG?
So that one is a WebPH. So
Okay.
that's essentially a web specific image. But if we were to click on it,
Then it,
Okay.
okay. It would normally open up as a preview.
it normally would, yes.
So when it shows the preview, it's larger, is that correct?
Generally, let's see, this is also, yep, okay, so it's not part of the email body, I don't think. So if we were to continue drafting the email, it would be a separate area.
Oh, okay, so those are attached, but they're still preview-ish.
Yes, it's just a small preview that the service provides. Okay, and then once we had all the pictures in the email, we could send it to our publisher. Sometimes different email services, especially with your receiving party, have limited size capacity. So if you have really high definition, nice images with a lot of pixels by pixels, those can eat up a lot of space and they might not be able to receive it. In which case, you can try finding similar images of smaller quality, or you can convert those pictures, but that might be a tech talk for a different day.
What do you mean by convert?
Convert, you can compress a file, so let's say it's 1,000 by 2,000 pixel size image. You can compress that same image to be maybe 100 by 200. So when it previews smaller on the screen versus your 1,000 by 200.
So you have to change the format of the picture to get it to go through.
Yes.
Is there any other way to get say you got 5 pictures you wanna send to the editor, is there a different way?
With Microsoft, you might try sending it as a link rather than attaching the file, because the links are smaller.
You could zip file it.
Zip filing, yes. That does get complicated though, and not every email service supports zip files,
Fair enough.
so.
And a PNG file is what?
A type of image. I forget what it stands for, but we have Google at our
Yeah, I was gonna
fingertips.
say, hold on a second.
Okay.
Because
A
some
portable
older-
network graphic.
What?
A portable network graphic.
Okay, because some older computers don't support
Some of them
like a
don't.
PNG
Yeah,
file.
it's a lossless data compression.
Yeah.
Is just how they define it. So it's just something that when you move it around, it doesn't really
Yes.
lose any data.
A fun fact about PNGs is that those types of images can have transparent backgrounds. So if we had this Google Photos with this pinwheel shape, sometimes, depending on how they're constructed, that you can have just the image without the white box of a background on it too. Just a fun fact.
So without manipulating the individual photos,
Hmm?
you can't send the 5, say?
You should be able to. Often if it's not allowing that email to go through, it's because those images are too big.
Now, I understand that, but
Mhm.
is there another way, if they are too big,
Yes.
okay?
So we've explored this option. So in this case, we've hit send, but another option, and we'll go back to OneDrive for this. So we have our image here in our OneDrive. Something else we can do is right click on this to see other options, and there should be an option to share. Now, if you're on your phone and you have images, there's also usually an ellipses icon where you can share, or there's a separate share button that has like a rectangle with an arrow coming out of the top. And that's like sharing a file is what that's meant to indicate. But if we share it, so if we're sharing it on the computer, we can include an email address. And you can just one by one send these files or share these files to your publisher. Or if you have an entire folder of pictures, you can also click the options here to share the whole folder of pictures, and they will get a link to that folder and have access to all the pictures within it. So let's say we were sending it to our publisher. We can also specify with this pencil, which indicates editing, we can also specify whether they can only view it, they could view it and maybe download it, or if they can edit them. So, like pictures, there would be like cropping, for example, making it smaller or bigger.
The
Or smaller.
initial thing you said, you type in the email address, attach one photo, and then do it with the next photo and the next?
Yes, you can be very selective, or if you want to do an all-in-one, you can gather those photos, put them in a folder for photos for publisher, and share that whole folder to them, simply by adding their email address to the shared access.
And that will transfer.
Yep, that'll give them at least viewability of the files inside that folder. And that's with Microsoft, and Google will be very similar, and Apple, I've not messed around much with it, but I imagine it's similar.
Will the publisher be able to use those photos then?
They should be able to, yes, especially if you give them edit access, which guaranteed will allow them to save copies of those pictures. So I've done this before with patrons for collaborative projects, where they shared a folder of pictures with me and we worked on them together here at the library. So excellent question, Randy, thank you. So that's kind of how OneDrive with Microsoft is set up, but I thought we might also look at another example just to kind of compare them. So we will go to Google Drive. And again, it would usually prompt you to log in with your email address and password to get into that account. And just like Microsoft, the landing page is a recently viewed or opened files. But just like Microsoft, we're also going to redirect to the heart of the Drive program, which is called My Drive in Google. And this is where your folders will be set up. And I have it set to dark mode, just as an aside. I have it set to dark mode to help with the recording, so that we have at least one example that can be viewed later. But here we have a folder, and I'll make this a little bigger. So here we have a folder and a file. So this folder has files within it, and this file here is just loose without a folder. If we were to add a file here, it would be very similar, you'll notice, because they also have the option to add specific files or to create new documents of their Office suite programs. But if we were to do another load here, go to downloads, and let's find a JPEG. Nebraska History Magazine. Randy knows what that one is. And it uploads, and now it's accessible. Here it lists the file type, but that's because it's part of the file's name. But if you wanted to see more about what kind of file it is, you could go Options and select, let's see, File Information to see details. And that will tell you what kind of file it is. Boop, boop, boop. So in our case, it's an image. Yeah. Alright, so that's how files get uploaded. Now on a device, let's say you have a Google phone or you're using a Google app. If you have a Google phone and you have pictures, it'll automatically save those pictures that you take with your phone's camera to Google Photos, because all those Google apps are built into the Google phone. If you have just a Galaxy smartphone, and if you have just a Galaxy smartphone, it'll have its own picture saving spot for that. Usually just it'll be called Photos on your phone. But you can also have Google Photos, iCloud, or OneDrive, and add them from there. So if you open those photos, select the options, you can share it to one of those other file storage services. But you would need to have the apps on those devices. So when we're talking about phones and tablets, you do have to have those apps put on the phone, installed, and logged into. Yeah.
Excuse my ignorance,
Nope.
but what's the definition of an app?
An app, the word itself is short for application. And when computers were first becoming popular, the term application and program were very similar. So we remember playing solitaire on our desktop computers. That was an application that was built into the machine. So on a smartphone, it'll have apps or programs for where your contacts are saved, or where your telephone part of the phone is. But then there's additional apps that you can add to the phone, and those apps are just other programs that your phone can work with.
So it's accessibility, is it?
I'm not sure. if I
An
just-
app would be considered each individual program. So every icon that you have on your phone, those are all applications. Every single square is an application.
Like the Weather Channel
Yeah.
is an app.
That's an app.
Let's see,
Okay.
it was a phrase that was popular in the early 2000s when
Mhm.
they started using apps, where they started having their own little square icons.
Mhm.
But the phrase was, there's an app for that. You wanna check the weather, there's an app for that. If you
Because
wanna,
for example, Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel would be more considered a program, but they have an app for that. So there's an application for Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel, and those then transfer into the program on a computer.
When you say they have an app for that, is that accessibility?
Yes, so on my phone currently at this current moment, I'm using a program called Pages, which is the Apple version of
word.
Word. As I fill this out, I can then go to my iPad, or I can go to my laptop computer, and I can open the app on my iPad or the program on my computer, and the file will already be stored there So it's just a way to kind of go from device to device. So, for example, if you had a tablet and you were taking pictures, you would save them to your Google, and then you could log into the desktop over here and pull up your Google, and now you have access to all your files because they're in the cloud.
And there's an app store.
Yes.
You can go to the app store
Where you can
to
download
get
the
your
applications.
App storage,
apps. App store.
Like
app
a-
store.
Yeah, a
Mhm.
place to acquire apps. So depending on what kind of device you have, your app store will look different. For a Samsung or Google phone, it'll be the Google Play Store or,
Google Play for Android?
Play for Android,
yep,
Play Store.
Play Store, and that's, I think maintained by Google.
Or
And
the
then-
Microsoft Store.
Yes, the Microsoft Store, Microsoft App Store, it'll look like this on both a device, so if you have a Windows phone, which those did not go over well, they're not common. Your App Store would look like that. They were terrible, they really were. And then your Google Play Store, not story. Your Google Play Store will look like this with the little triangle and it'll be in a white box.
And
And-
Galaxy has a Galaxy Store.
Galaxy Store,
It's,
okay.
it doesn't make sense, but yeah.
Thank you though. And then Apple's is simply called the.
It's right there.
Oh yes, the Apple App Store. So they all look a little different and they're dependent on devices, but it's where you would go to download things like Libby or like Google Photos or Microsoft Word. You should be able to download all those apps regardless of what device you have. They try to make those applications cross-compatible.
Microsoft Word is an app?
It sure is.
Okay.
Yep.
I know what that is.
Yes, so with the Microsoft Word app, as an example, if you had that app on your phone, you could work on documents through that app on your phone. Okay. Let's see, so we've seen a couple different examples of file storage. I've shown you mostly the online versions, but the mobile versions or those app versions will be very similar. They'll have a lot of these similar icons like the plus to add a file or to share a file will often look like either add somebody to share it to, or again, that rectangle with the arrow coming out of it. I'll show you here. Images. So it'll usually look something like this. Share as if to pass it on to somebody else, or to slide a file over to somebody, or to connect a file to different applications is what those icons are meant to symbolize visually. But these are all examples of share icons.
So what would be, selecting a file and using different applications?
How do you mean?
What would that be? I mean,
Oh, okay, I see. So usually that would be on a mobile device, and it would be sharing, well, let's see. Some websites will do it, but let's say you went to a web page that had that connected dot icon.
okay.
If you clicked on that icon, you could share that web page, for example, to a social media account. So an app like
Oh.
Instagram or
I wondered
Facebook.
how you did that.
Yep.
Hmm.
Yep, so, let's see, we can maybe do an example of that. We'll go to the library's Facebook, and let's say we want to share the, I don't know, let me think, what website might have, maybe the city website. Let's see, so they have social media icons, but this is maybe not a, ooh, CSC would definitely have it. They're very up to date. What I'm looking for, I was trying to see if I could find those dots. But you'll see it a lot on tablets and phones mostly, because those mobile web pages that you're looking
I've
at.
seen it, I just never knew what it was, so I
Yep.
never used it.
It's a share icon. So
Okay.
if you were to select it, it would then present you with a menu of places you might like to share it to, whether it was save that bookmark to your browser or send that web page to Instagram or Facebook or something. Excellent question. So with that, they're very similar. The online versions are usually more detailed and in-depth. You have a lot more options and you can specify things. If you were to select a bunch of photos from your phone to send to a publisher, you would usually have to hold on to the picture until a little check mark appeared, and then you could select all the ones that are on the screen, scroll down and select some more, and then hit the share button and send all those files to somebody or to a folder. So they're similar but different. With a mobile device, if you're trying to do really highly detailed stuff, you have to be very careful because you might accidentally select all the pictures or something like that. Well, that's majority of what I wanted to share with everybody. What questions do you guys have besides the excellent ones you've given?
Well,
Isn't that cool?
this is,
Awesome.
again,
One thing
academic,
is what they call sunken
primitive,
gardens,
but-
and we went down and looked through
because
there, and
I've
all
had
these
trouble
little flowers and
sending
everything.
online.
We found that bee got
I just
on
put
the
them on
cool.
flash drives
We
and
have
mail.
So there's like
That's
That's the
a,
primitive way.
maybe 100 hives.
I feel like
Oh, yeah?
primitive would apply more to like you had them developed at the drugstore and printed and stuck in an envelope and mailed that way.
So
So you're halfway between primitive and modern by using a thumb drive.
I'm only halfway.
Yeah.
jar.
Alright.
And that's not a hard and
then
fast
sand on side,
standard,
and then
that's
close
just
the
my
door.
I know what you're saying.
And they're like, what? I was like, "They're super
So,
good,
but that's a
they're
good
good for food,
surefire
like
way.
the
Thumb
season's
drives are
almost
still
over."
very
Yeah.
applicable and helpful. They're,
That's
They're not
what I
gonna,
do.
They're not
yeah, no, they're
obsolete
not gonna
by
bite,
any
they're not
means.
gonna sting
Yeah.
you.
allergic.
What was the question on thumb drive?
the question was, how primitive is it to send pictures to another person by putting picture files on a thumb drive and
Oh.
putting them in the mail?
Yes.
To which I said it's about halfway between primitive and modern in the sense you didn't take the film to the drugstore to develop, have them printed, stick them in an envelope and send them out.
You'd say it's around 1950.
Well, make sure it's gotta be a USB-C now, cause like, starting to go the way it's done with the
USB thumb
USB.
drives, USB thumb drives and hard drives are evolving all the time. You'll notice the plugs on your phones are changing and the cables all the time. But the thumb drive USB that has the rectangular shaped plug is still very standard for a lot of desktop machines. However, laptops are increasingly having less and less or fewer and fewer ports to be able to plug those in. So they're opting for smaller USB drives, but those thumb drives that have the smaller port are also becoming more accessible, cheaper, readily available in places like,
And those are the USB-Cs?
yep, the USB-Cs have a
Like
rounded
an
shape.
angle on the side?
No, they're the small round ones.
Oh, okay.
The ovals.
Yes, perhaps we can bring up an image of,
But it's still pretty standard on
USB.
desktop.
yep, so USB stands for Universal Serial
So
Bus,
if you flip to the
which
bottom.
is, the emphasis on the
This is
universal.
a-
It's meant to be usable on Mac
It's got a
computers,
flat one.
Windows computers, different devices like digital cameras,
Like one
or
generation, but they're all
different
moving
pieces
to
of equipment.
this kind
So
of-
my scan gun for the library that I use to scan barcodes is regular USB, that like standard rectangular
It's the
shape.
same.
So it's a USB connected next computer that way.
However,
So it's
So
still
that's,
good on
that's where I
Microsoft.
plug in my
Most
charger,
of the
Yeah.
time,
that's where I
yep,
would.
as
plug
long as
in
you've got a
the
desktop or a
that's
laptop
also
that
where
has the
your
USB ports,
data cable.
then you're okay.
Okay.
So if I have almost all my storage used
So yeah,
up,
you can see,
Mhm,
yes.
and there's a button here that says clean up space,
mhm.
but I've never used it cause I'm afraid I might lose information.
So depending on, is that storage that you're seeing full, is that on your computer or is that online? Where are you
It's
seeing
on-
it from?
Google.com, of course it's on all my
The
accounts.
Oh, like your
cloud.
Gmail account?
Yeah,
Okay, so when Google says clean up your account, it might look for duplicate files, or
Oh.
it might try to compress large files. So it's
Okay.
worth doing a search to see what does Google mean by clean up my
Oh,
storage.
okay, that's how you
Okay.
figure it out.
Yep,
I know the wife's pushing the 15 gigs on
Mhm.
free,
yeah,
and most of it's pictures. What would you recommend moving those to?
okay, so a good cheat is that social media accounts have bottomless amounts of photo storage. An example, Facebook,
Yes.
you can select or you can create a photo album and you can limit its viewability. So if you wanted to save or create a folder of pictures of your children, for example, and you didn't want the whole world to see, but you wanted to have bottomless storage to save all those great pictures, you can create a private folder on Facebook, or a photo album is what they call it. And you can just upload those endlessly. So social media accounts are a great option for mass storage of files. They're built and designed around that. And then otherwise, it's just like the old shoe boxes full where
Yeah.
you have to really sift through. Manually sorting through pictures, digital pictures,
Yeah.
is
Mhm.
difficult. And a lot of the times those are duplicates or repeat
Mhm.
shots of the same scene.
Mm-hmm.
So some preventative measures that you can take is, depending on how your camera apps are set up, you can set them to not take burst shots. What a burst shot is you're trying to capture maybe an action moment, so it'll take 10 or 12 pictures at once. And then you can select of them which one you wanna keep, but if you don't select it, if you don't open that picture and select it, then you keep all 12 copies of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a preventative option. Another thing is, I know iPhones do it, I don't know whether Galaxy,
Hold alive.
but there's a feature on those called Live, where it essentially takes a GIF, like a short clip
Mhm.
of a
Like a
picture, and
short
then it
video.
moves a little bit.
Okay.
And so if you turn off Live, that reduces the size of the file quite a bit, because it's just a still image rather than a short video
Yes.
file.
Okay.
So that's what I would recommend, is social media accounts, or if you know you wanna keep them, you can download them to a hard drive, like an external hard drive. I do maintain a personal terabyte sized one that's like 1,000 gigabytes,
Okay.
and you can have those just on the shelf in a safe place as
And you would
well.
suggest a hard drive, a terabyte hard drive over, say, like a larger gig stick, 32, 64?
So when deciding between, let's say, a terabyte external hard drive or
Mhm.
let's say a 64 gig thumb drive.
Yes.
So the difference there is, if I had a specific album or project, like these are summer 2024 pictures, and I
Yes.
wanna keep those separate, the smaller thumb drive might be more appropriate. If you're just trying to say, I need to clear out my Google Drive because it's overfull and I wanna keep using it, I'm gonna grab all of these and just have a chunk.
Okay.
Because the terabyte will be able to support an immense amount of pictures and video files.
For example, up in the water plant, we
Mhm.
have the hard drive plugged in the computer for backups. It's got like 5 years worth of data on it. And then I have that gig stick for
Yes.
just like our everyday
Yeah,
moving back
yes.
and forth.
Okay, yes.
So like active files that you're using constantly, or anything that you really want access to, thumb drives are awesome because they're really portable.
Mm-hmm.
A hard drive is really good for longer term storage
Okay.
and maybe going into them every now and again.
Yep, I think I've had the same external hard drive for maybe 6 to 10 years.
Yeah, easy.
But because it sees very little use, I use it for backing up big folders or lots of files. And so the cord is still in great condition because I'm not using it all the time. But a thumb drive is built to be plugged and played all
Yes.
the time.
Okay. So, you mentioned,
Well, $2,
the
cause you have one and I have.
difference between the USB-C and the USB and all that, and some computers are going away from that.
Yep.
Does your hard drive, what cord does it have, and is there a chance that you're gonna run into that trouble of not having
Pigtails.
the right, oh yeah, the right pigtail to
Yeah,
go to?
you just go
Okay.
pigtails.
No, I
Okay.
don't.
What do you mean pigtails?
So a USB to USB-C, it'd be a USB-C on
Oh,
one
an
side, with a
adapter.
USB
Yeah,
adapter,
yeah,
pigtail,
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah,
You're good.
okay.
No
Um,
worries.
or even you can get like cables, so it'd have a USB-C on one side, it'll have a
Mhm.
USB on the other side, or a USB-A, you know.
We
Yes.
use those a
Okay.
lot in the military,
Mhm.
because we had a lot of legacy equipment.
Mhm.
So, my personal hard drive, it's got its own port to plug into the hard drive itself, so the
Mhm.
port is specific to it.
Yes.
But it's a regular USB, and when that changes, I'll either upgrade the whole hard drive, or I'll just get an adapter if I've still got, let's say,
Gotcha.
tons of space on that
Okay.
hard drive. So, excellent questions, very, very good questions. What other ones?
So how do I know, looking at my files, what's taking all my space?
Excellent, and you're talking about a Gmail account or a Google
Yeah.
account?
It was in
Excellent.
his, yeah, in his drive.
So, if we're here in our Google Drive, down here where it says storage, mine's very empty because I don't use this for much. But if we expand that by clicking on it, it'll give us a breakdown. So here we can see in my Google Drive, there's files, there's photos, and then there's the email. If we were to look at a similar example.
It should, yeah, and then it gives the size on the side.
Here,
And you can arrange that by largest
yeah.
to smallest. If you'd like, you can click on that and it'll arrange it.
click on what?
And then it'll show you your larger files, your smaller files. Also sometimes the, what is it, the last modified date, it'll let you know the last time you actually opened that file and looked at it or modified it in any way, shape or form.
Yep.
So you can start to decide what's
So,
important and what's not.
if you're looking at this bar and let's say your Gmail is taking up the majority of the space, easy things you can do to reduce Gmail or email files is to go through and erase the spam folder, the trash folder, and your send folders.
Yeah,
So,
okay, thanks.
yes, absolutely. And if you hover, if you're online like here, and you hover over the different categories, it'll tell you precisely how big each category is for Google. And Microsoft will do something similar. So here, oh, perhaps. Options. Okay, so with Microsoft, you'd go to your settings and you'd select options and it'll bring you here, and of the sub-tabs of options, the first one is storage, and again, it has that breakdown. So they're very similar, they're in direct competition with each other. So they're trying to say, mine's prettier. But, and again, Microsoft does not have its own pictures application or app. So your OneDrive in this case would include all your digital files and pictures, or document files and picture files. So, that's a very basic, base level introduction to cloud storage and some go-to options that might suit you really well, just on things that you might already have access to, accounts you might already have. If you guys have ideas for other Tech Talk subjects that you'd like to see more about, I am very open to that and would love to hear those. Whether it's leaving me a sticky note, coming to visit, or shooting me an email or something like that. So, unless anybody has any other questions, just thank you so much for coming tonight.
I have questions. Why are you so awesome?
Because I have such a wonderful supportive husband.
I don't believe that at all.
Why
Oh,
are
he's
you-
your work husband. Come on. Huh, ain't that so? So, awesome. Well, I'll get this cleared up. But thank you for coming to our Tech Talk. What excellent questions you all brought as well. And if you ever have questions about tech, you can always visit me anyway. We don't have to have an event or an appointment. The library is very happy to help with things you might be working on.
This is different.
Well, thank you.
When I
Thank
do
you.
that presentation on
Mhm.
November,
So how do I delete?
you have the
junk
ability to set
box,
it up?
Mailbox.
Oh, yes.
You do.
Select
Yep.
all and delete it.
I've just got 12 images on a flash drive,
Perfect.
but you have the ability to,
Yep, so with your
can,
flash drive.
can I manipulate it?
Mhm. Yep, so
'Cause
I've got
it's
a,
good to go forward and back.
Yes,
Yeah.
so I've got a keyboard here, in that case, you use like the arrow keys.
Okay,
And, it'll be up here with you, you can see the screen here, so just like I was going through that PowerPoint slide earlier,
So
I
like
was
a
using
screen
the
by
keys to
screen.
thumb back and
Okay.
forth.
alright.
Yep,
I
Well,
guess,
good.
well,
I don't know
it's
if Renee might be able to help me, but if not,
absolutely,
not?
and I can be
Because-
your tech guy during that presentation too, so you can focus on what you're talking about if you prefer.
okay. Alright,
You mentioned social media storage.
Mhm.
Stop it.
Are you ever concerned that social media would use your stuff without your approval?
I
That
I mean, I know that they talk about that a lot.
No, I believe it's in the end user agreement where you would find that if they can, and
Okay.
since a lot of people won't read that 200-page document.
Yeah.
But it is social media, it is public forum.
Mm-hmm.
It would be like you posting a photo of yourself on a light pole and then somebody coming by and taking a picture of it
Mm-hmm.
and then using it as for whatever purposes.
Yeah, well, because like you said, you could set
You can set your
folders
privacy.
for private,
Yes, you can.
but do we know that those companies aren't using stuff?
So I
I hate to
will-
put on the
Nope.
tinfoil hat.
No,
but-
because the next problem is you said it's a private, but you give me access to it, then I can take from that private and share it public, I believe.
Well,
Or copy
so,
it.
Yeah, I
You
guess
know?
that's the question, do you set it to private and not give anyone access? If you want it just for you, but I guess the question there is, how do you know the company's not using it?
to begin
I hate
with,
to tinfoil hat that, but.
nope, you can usually in the support pages for each website, like Instagram, Facebook,
Mhm.
Twitter, you can usually find in the support section, what are you doing with my data? Or how do you handle
Okay.
my data that's stored or filed? And every one of them is gonna be a little different. One of the big concerns lately is that, especially with artists of visual artwork who post their art on Instagram and Facebook on the
Mhm.
internet, is that those images are being treated like stock images and fed into AI systems
I was
to,
gonna
so that they
say
can learn.
AI is,
So there's
Scary.
a lot of legislation in the works to try to build protections in for people's files, cause that doesn't go just for artwork, but
Yeah.
it's using people's portraits and stuff that they take, selfies and stuff, to be able to generate realistic human faces, cause now it knows what human faces look like.
Mhm.
So I would actually highly recommend that you all attend the last tech talk of this month, cause it's called Secrets in Your Data. It's
Mhm.
gonna be a showing of a documentary that talks about how that data gets used.
Awesome.
But with each individual app or company that you're using to store those pictures, you'll have to look for specifically how they're handling it. In the App Store, they're starting to be more transparent about what information of yours they have access to. So I know when I'm in the Apple App Store, it'll say this app, if you download it and log into it, will have access to your pictures, to recordings, to your camera. Because for example, if you're taking a Facebook Live video, it'll need access to your camera and to your audio settings to be able to record the visual and audio. But that doesn't necessarily specify what all they're gonna do with that access. And
Mhm.
that's where you have to go in and dig to see what they're doing. And they will vary it in the fine print.
Mhm.
But there's often help pages that have that kind of condensed in the support forums. So,
Okay.
we could look up an example.
thank you, Ashley.
You're welcome, Randy, thank you.
Bye, Randy.
See ya.
So,
Bye.
even with Facebook,
Mhm.
I noticed recently on Facebook, I don't necessarily personally prefer Facebook for any professional or personal use.
Mhm.
They have it very spread out, the settings are very difficult to navigate.
Mhm.
And, I'll probably trim this part off of my TikTok recording so that they don't come after me, but, but I've noticed that even if you set certain things, and I don't think it would do this for photo albums put on there, but I don't know that they wouldn't either. But I've seen settings I've made in terms of privacy
Mhm.
undone when they update those
Mhm.
settings.
Okay.
So check regularly, maybe like quarterly at least, how your settings are looking. And if you want some help with that, you can come to the library too, we'll go through it together. So
That's on Facebook.
Facebook's a mess. because, even just to, well, anyway, I could do a whole tech talk on why Facebook is a pain in the butt, but
Might be interesting.
it could be interesting, yes. For example.
I don't know, it's fun going to Concerned Citizens of Crawford.
But at the same time,
I know.
Reading.
I keep
the
myself off
feed
Facebook,
on
it's not worth it.
Facebook, especially these days, cause 10 years ago, Facebook was a completely different beast.
Yes.
Completely
Yeah.
different.
Yes.
Today,
Facebook and
the-
TikTok
the
are a good way to lose
the
it.
front page feed of your Facebook is not necessarily what
I know.
pages you follow or like, accounts that you're friends with. It will first feed you whatever it thinks you'll spend the most time looking at. Whether that's an advertisement or like one of those short reels videos.
That's why I'm getting on them recipes.
Mhm.
To
Yes,
look
and
at.
it's
It
paying
does, 'cause
attention
it
to
takes
which
some-
ones you
That's-
linger on.
It takes the ones
So
you
it can
linger
show you
on, or
more
ones
of
you
them.
listen to.
Pay
or-
attention to what?
Well, so if you're scrolling and you stop at a recipe, and then you scroll, and you stop at a
Subways.
recipe,
Mhm.
and then it's gonna start
That's-
sending you
I
recipes,
get a
so you
lot of
slow your
recipes.
scrolls.
Yes, it's measuring how long you're spending, how many times you watch it, and
But
it
it's,
has
you've
tags
also
to
given it
know
access to your,
we'll send you more
your
like
camera,
that.
Yeah.
so it's, the cameras can watch where your eyes are on the screen.
Yeah.
Because
they'll
you've allowed
pay
access.
attention.
When you talk about something and all of a sudden it pops up in your feed and you're like, what is going on? Well, you've given it access to your microphone, so it's listening. You give it access to
Secrets
your
in your
location,
data,
it
last
follows
tech
you
talk
around
of
town.
September, let's learn all together.
These are the,
My mother has
these are the
one of those
information,
digital
and,
photos.
I mean, this is what, everyone's like, well, I don't have anything to hide, and it's like, but you're subjecting yourself to, imagine if TV could have done that in the
Well,
nineties.
yeah. I'm saying
Basically,
they're probably pretty
picture
bored
from-
watching what I'm
You know,
doing,
and
but.
that picture scroll
Except
across.
for when
and
I'm not
there's
watching
the-
lightning.
and like you
That's
said,
what that's what the.
if you have a picture set as
companies
private,
want.
but
They
she
want
decides to
create
share them
content
to,
creators and stuff like that.
or share access to other
Interesting.
people,
Mhm.
it's still
That's-
gonna go out, right?
It's essentially creating, in a lot of situations, it's essentially creating another copy of that file.
Mhm.
And that copy may not have the same permissions set that the original did.
Correct, okay.
Yep,
'Cause
so that one.
she's wanting us to put a lot of pictures on that app, and we're going, but what is the protection there? Our concern
If
is
it's a
that
picture frame
usually
app,
it's the boy's birthday or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, if you've got the boy's full name,
yeah.
their date of birth,
Mhm.
how easy is it still their information? And we keep telling her that, and she's like, well, I wanna share it to my family, and I get that, but who are they sharing it with, or who are they allowing access to?
The young people of today are gonna be the first generation where their entire lives are photographed digitally and recorded. Where they're gonna have picture trails dating all the way back to their conception. 8 weeks,
Yep.
16 weeks, 52 weeks, get it out.
And I know that, I don't wanna be this way, but usually it's the elderly that are
That
a
are most
better
at-
chance or higher
Yes.
at risk for getting
That's
data
a
stolen
common
or
fact.
whatever,
Well,
and.
there was an article put out recently that 5.6 billion social security numbers have been leaked online.
Yeah.
From different hacking and they attach them to passwords, and unfortunately password security is something people
Do you
don't
guys
put enough
remember-
stock into.
Do you guys remember that commercial where it was like an older lady and she was assuming a lot of Facebook activities, but she was taking physical thumbtacks and saying, I'm posting your picture to my wall. And they're like, that's not how that works, it's not how any of this works. That is a very real sentiment, and it's not meant to belittle or make fun of older folks who maybe aren't familiar with just the sheer amount, density, and complexity of the settings that are in there. Cause even the picture you snap with your phone, depending on your device and how it's set up, that has a location piece of information. So there was sayings when I was in the service, loose tweets sink fleets. Just, or what was another one, Edward? There was another one that was really good.
Loose lips sink ships,
No,
loose tweets sink
Anyway,
fleets, yeah, well.
So they teach us extensively to be very mindful and limited with how we interact with social media, because so much of your interactions are geotagged, meaning
Mhm.
they take
Geotagging
geographical
metadata,
information of
yeah.
where you are. So if you're on an operation mission and you take a selfie with your buddies as you're about to jump out of a helicopter for like a
an offer, training, and
Yeah,
and-
then all of a sudden, that public information, again, depending on how your profiles are set up, is now accessible. And so the enemy might be paying attention to what your division is doing. And it might be waiting for you to post something so that it can get that geotag and get you. But those are also people looking for that information. So whether people are looking for it or not, a lot of that data exists, so.
Well, and I think a civilian example of that is people going on vacation and posting pictures of themselves on vacation away from their
Yes.
house, and people breaking into their house and stealing all their stuff while they're
Yes,
gone.
and again, whether it's like, a lot of people's Facebook and social media accounts are open, public. You don't need to have an account on those platforms to look at them, and you might not have any protection set in place just because maybe they refreshed those policies so often that it undid whatever settings you might have done, or they've added so many new features that it's just opened your profile back up. So that could be a whole series in itself, is how to go review your privacy settings in Facebook, in Instagram, in X is what they call it now.
So, yeah, I'm terrible. I have iCloud storage,
Mhm.
I have whatever Microsoft is,
I have all of them
OneDrive,
too.
and I have, Google
Mhm.
storage. So, and I've almost maxed them all out.
Okay.
And we've added storage to the Apple, but, so is
The
there,
iCloud.
or the iCloud, is there any way of figuring out if, like, say if it's photos, if it's being shared, like the same photo is on all three?
Ooh, that is an
That's a
complex
fun one,
inquiry.
that would be
Because
where
I,
a hard
you know,
drive
it would be
would-
nice to clean it up,
Yeah,
but I don't wanna lose the pictures.
right,
And so if there was a way of, like, say,
comparing them.
yeah, without, I mean,
Just
an
have to
easy
pull them
way.
all and put them,
That would also,
but
I
then you
mean,
might have formatting issues back and forth between, like, if they could tell whether it's the same.
in
picture.
short, there's not an easy way that I know of.
Well, I was afraid you were just gonna say, yeah.
I'll just be
that's-
very honest, there's
yeah.
not an easy way that I know of, but there could be in the future,
I
but
mean,
at the
because
same
that's
time-
probably part of my problem, like when I
Mhm.
load camera pictures from my camera,
Yeah,
they go to possibly all three, because most of my storage is filled with photos.
some of that could be alleviated, at least preemptively or preventative wise, with how those apps are set up on your devices. So if you have Google Photos as an app on your iPhone, you can go into the settings for that Google Photos app, and if it's got something selected like sync all of my phone photos with my Google Photos, then it's definitely making copies of your iPhone's pictures onto your Google account. So you can go into
Then
each
would-
application.
Then would it show you if you had duplication?
No, not that I know of. Not that I know of. I'm trying
Okay.
to think of the times I've dabbled with it, cause I cross-platform, share and exchange a lot of pictures because, the library computer is a Microsoft one, so sharing my iPhone's pictures that I take of and at the library and sharing it directly to the OneDrive for the library, but it creates duplicates everywhere it lands, so you have to be mindful and manage it in the moment,
Yeah,
and
I'm way behind that though.
in which case, bit by bit, you can just kind of
Yeah.
start sifting. Putting things in folders can be helpful, it's, especially if it's like, well, these are all wedding photos, these are all the one vacation photos.
And you do that on the drive itself,
You can do that on the drive itself, any of those,
just create a file and then
yes.
put them in there.
And if you're in a Photos app like Apple Photos, you can specify albums, is what they call it, instead of folders, but they have the same icon.
So if you have files on your hard drive also, are they also like stored on?
When you say hard drive, do you mean within the computer?
Yes.
Okay, if it's stored on the computer, so that one's a Windows computer, I noticed. Come here, mouse,
Mhm.
come back to life. Okay, So if you're on a computer, File Explorer is where you can see what pictures are on your device. Why is that so teeny? I'm sorry, it's so small. But you have this kind of, fine, be giant. Here you have the list of like what folders you have. Quick access is just ones that are favorited or used often. This PC is gonna have everything that's on that computer, so that's gonna be the one you're gonna look at. If you wanna see how much you have on your computer overall, this is where you'll see it. So in this case, I have 70 gigabytes free of the total of 224. If you wanna see where things are saved within that, it can get complicated, but it's usually the users, and this is in-depth stuff here. This is stuff I would have to look at in the Navy all the time, because computers would get filled up real fast when lots of people are using them. But this is the primary user, so this is where each of the folders are for that particular user. And there's a truncated version of that here, that's where most of them will be, but I direct us to the C drive to see all these folders, because here you can usually set to see how big each of those files are. So if we go into documents, that one's rather empty. If we go into downloads, that one has some. But you can select each of those folders by right-clicking as well and select properties to get a breakdown of how much space it's actually using. And that way you can see which one's
So,
giving you the most trouble.
If you have a executable file on your,
Computer?
yeah, on your computer, like say it's in your downloads.
Yep.
And you've opened it, but the files are still there.
The executable file
Right,
can't be
I mean, you
removed
could-
without
Right, but
sacrificing.
can you get rid of that executable file without getting rid of
Yes.
the file that you're using on your computer?
Yes, well, if I'm understanding your question correctly, you're asking, can you take the executable file off without removing the program that it
Right,
installed?
yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
The executable file is simply an installation file, it's just a program that puts that on the computer. If it gets run twice, usually it'll either replace the existing one or it just will add a second copy, but most of the time they don't, so there's no risk of removing those
That was
executable
my
files.
question, if I
Yep.
delete an exe file,
Yep. Oh gosh.
if it's gone, so.
Yeah.
10 minutes after.
Just, you know, cause if all your information is there on that
Yep.
program that you're using, and you delete it, and it would take everything.
Nope, the
away, yeah.
executable file is just an installation file.
Okay,
So
so that's what I thought, but
you would have to go
I never
in-
delete anything, cause I'm so.
You need private lessons.
You would have to go into
Ashley.
the apps portion of the computer's like control panel and uninstall that application.
Yeah, I've
to-
done that before, but
Yeah.
with something that I'm not using or never
Right.
used, but something that I have previously used.
But that would be the only way you'd risk losing. So if you had OneDrive downloaded onto your computer and you uninstalled it, you'd lose your access to those files because the app isn't there. But it wouldn't necessarily delete those files from your OneDrive account, as in that example. That was maybe a
Oh,
bad
okay,
example.
that is a good example.
Okay.
So if I put it back on, then I could access those files still?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Such is the beauty of cloud storage.
Yeah.